Welcome to Meeple Mentor. I'm Jared, and we are about to play Dune Imperium. Let's take a look. I'll show you how. Feel free to pause the video as needed to follow along with your copy of the game. My goal is this video can not only teach you to play, but can be shown at the game table to help set up and teach the game at your next game session. As part of that goal, I've added chapter timestamps in the description to the different sections of the tutorial to easily recap relevant rules for you. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell below the video so you don't miss any of my latest content. Dune is one of the most beloved and revered sci-fi series, from the books to the movies. Now we have Dune Imperium, a board game that captures the theme and style so well. On the harsh desert planet of Arrakis, the great houses of the Imperium all seek to control the limited spice resource in the known universe. Spice is only found on this Dune planet, and conflict for the power it provides is ongoing. Whoever controls the spice controls the universe. The board game uses deck building and worker placement mechanisms together to create an engaging gameplay experience. 1 to 4 players get to control one of the 4 great houses, using one of 2 leaders from that house. I won't go further into the lore, but if you're interested, there are lots of story descriptions of everything found in the game in the rulebook. As a leader, you'll defeat rivals in combat, wield political influence, and form alliances with the 4 major factions of Dune. Score the most victory points to win the game. But first, let's get into setting up the game. Start by laying out the game board in the center of the table. Place the Mentat piece on the Mentat space forum. Place these 4 alliance tokens on the marked areas of the faction's influence tracks. They're both color-coded and have symbols. Now you'll need to create the conflict deck. To do that, first separate them into the conflict 1, 2, and 3 cards. Shuffle the 4 conflict 3 cards and put them face down first onto the space for them. Next, shuffle the 10 conflict 2 cards and deal 5 face down on top of the stack. The rest can return to the game box. Lastly, shuffle the 4 conflict 1 cards and deal only 1 to the top of the stack. The rest won't be used. Take the intrigue cards and shuffle them together. Place the face-down deck next to the game board. Next, separate the 3 reserve cards into 3 of their own stacks. There will be Arrakis liaison cards, the Spice Must Flow, and Fold Space cards. These are always available to gain. Pull out the starting cards to make up each player's starting deck. Each player's starting deck is composed of 10 cards. 2 convincing arguments, 2 daggers, 1 diplomacy, 2 Dune, the desert planet, 1 reconnaissance, 1 seek allies, and 1 signet ring. The starting cards all have this symbol found in the top left corner. Give each player a starting deck and shuffle it. From the rest of the Imperium cards, shuffle them together and create a face-down deck above the game board. Make sure none of the starting cards are included in this deck. Then deal 5 off the top face up to make the Imperium row cards. Now each player should be dealt a random leader card. You should avoid having both leaders from the same house in play. For the first game, the rulebook recommends you use only the leader cards that have 1 icon. Everyone's starting deck should sit to the left of the leader card. Create supplies off the board of the spice resource, Solari, and water tokens. The Solari are the currency in the game. None of the resources are meant to be a limited supply. Give each player 1 water token to start with. Each player gets to choose a color to be and collect all the pieces that go with it. There are 3 agents, 2 discs, 1 combat marker, 16 cubes, and 3 control markers. Everyone should place one of their agents next to the game board over here. Place one of your discs on the score track. In a 4-player game, they'll start at 1 instead of 0. Place the combat markers at 0 of the combat track, showing this side face up. At the bottom space of each of the faction tracks, everyone should place one of their cubes to represent the amount of influence they have in each faction. The rest of your cubes are your troops for combat. Everyone starts with 3 troops in their garrison. Claim the garrison circle closest to you to be yours the rest of the game. The remaining components in your color should be near you on the table. Randomly determine a first player and give them the first player marker. You're now ready to start the game. The game plays over a series of rounds, ending after 10 rounds, or sooner if any player gets to 10 or more victory points. In each round, a new conflict card is flipped over, so with 10 conflict cards, it's a good tracker for the default end of the game. Some points can be earned through combat, and others through advancing up the faction's influence tracks. Everyone will take turns in the round, doing one agent action at a time, or taking a reveal turn. There are lots of worker action spaces for your agents to go to, but each one is limited to one agent at a time. At the start of the game, everyone only has 2 agents to use, but can gain a third later. Everyone's leader has 2 unique abilities. The one on the bottom left is a special that applies situationally as written. The ability on the right activates whenever you play your signet ring card on one of your agent turns. If you have questions about how the special abilities work, there's a comprehensive clarification section of the rulebook on page 13. During the game, you'll get to add new cards to your deck from the Imperium row or the standard reserve cards. As with most deck builders, gained cards go into your discard pile found on the right of your leader card. New cards will allow you to do more complex actions or allow you to more easily go to certain board locations. There are ways in the game to trash cards out of your deck permanently as well. It's a good idea to get rid of some of the less useful cards and replace them with stronger ones. Gaining influence with the 4 factions is an important part of gaining victory points and are good goals to shoot for. After your cube bumps up twice, you gain a victory point. However, if your cube drops down, you lose it. By reaching 4 influence on a faction track, you earn the bonus shown by the small icon there. Going back down does not make you give back the bonus though. If you are the first player to cross the gold threshold, you also gain the alliance token and earn another victory point. Whoever holds the token is said to be in an alliance with that faction. However, if another player passes you on the track to a higher space in the track, they take the alliance token from you. You'll have to lose the victory point it gave you, and the other player gains a point. During the game, you can also gain intrigue cards. There's no limit to how many intrigue cards you can hold at a time. The cards represent subterfuge, backroom dealings, and surprise twists. Some can give you resources, increase your influence with a faction, or even give you victory points, so don't ignore them completely. A single round of the game follows the same 5 phases each time in order. This is also shown on the game board here as a reminder. Everyone goes through each phase at the same time. First is the round start phase. Reveal the top conflict card from the deck and place it face up next to the deck. Each new card will sit on top of the previous cards. Then every player can simultaneously draw 5 cards from their personal deck to form their hand this round. If you should draw a card but the deck is empty, then shuffle the discards to make a new deck to draw from. Next, players take turns in clockwise order, starting with the player holding the first player marker. They'll take one turn at a time, round and round, until everyone runs out of agents to place and are forced to take a reveal turn as their final turn. There's essentially 2 types of turns, an agent turn and reveal turn. Agent turns are when you use a card to place one of your agents on the board to take the worker action. The reveal turn is the final turn you can take in the round, usually done after all your agents have been used. Of course, you can always decide to do the reveal turn while you still have agents, but you can no longer participate in the round afterwards. So once everyone has done their reveal turn, the phase ends. Additionally, on your turn, you can play plot intrigue cards you've gained. These can be played on either turn type. I'll go into more detail on the player turns in a second. The third phase is combat, happening once all players finish their reveal turns. Any players who have troops in the center of the board will participate in the conflict. Each cube on the battlefield is worth 2 strength. Troops still in your garrison don't count. The first step is to let players play combat intrigue cards. Start with the player with the first player token and go clockwise, playing any number of combat cards. You can pass or come back in after passing to add more combat cards too. Once everyone has passed consecutively, then resolve the combat. Typically, the cards change the number of troops a player has in the conflict. Each sword icon increases your strength by 1. Their combat marker will adjust on the combat strength track to reflect their current strength. Finally, the combat gets resolved and awards are given to the participating players according to their strength rank. The player with the highest strength wins the conflict and gains the top reward shown on the conflict card. The second highest player gains the second reward. If playing a 4-player game, then assign the third reward to third place. Only players who participated in the battle with at least 1 troop in the battlefield may earn rewards. Once all the rewards are given, each player takes their troops from the battlefield back in front of them to their supply. Move everyone's combat strength back to 0. If there's a tie for first, no one wins the conflict. The tied players instead both gain the second reward. In a 4-player game, the other 2 players still compete for the third place reward. When a tie for second place happens, they both gain the third reward. Ties for third gain nothing. Some conflict cards reward the player with control over one of the 3 Dune spaces, Arrakeen, Carthage, or Imperial Basin. You'll see which one by looking at the conflict card's title. By winning the first place reward on those cards, you additionally get to take one of your control markers and place it on the flag below the associated board space. By having your control marker there, you receive the bonus shown next to the marker spot anytime any player sends an agent there, even you. Arrakeen and Carthage will give you 1 Solari, while the Imperial Basin gives you 1 spice. If another conflict card is revealed for a space you control, gain an immediate defensive bonus. You get to deploy 1 troop from your supply directly into the battlefield. If someone else wins that conflict for one of your controlled locations, they replace you with their marker. After combat comes the 4th phase, Makers. During this phase, spice can accumulate on certain spaces on the board. These 3 desert spaces on Dune have the Maker icon. If no agent was sent to that space, place 1 spice from the supply on the space designated. This is added to any previously gained spice there. Sometimes all 3 spaces will gain a spice, and other times none of them will. The final phase is the recall phase. During this phase, first check if any player has reached 10 or more victory points on the score track. Then look to see if the conflict deck is empty. If either of these is true, the end game is triggered. Otherwise, during the recall phase, the Mentat worker returns to a space in the Landsrod if he's not already. Players pick up their agents placed and return them to their leaders. Finally, the first player marker passes clockwise to the next player. Then the round is over, so proceed to the first phase of the next round. Going into more detail about the player turns, let's look at each of the 2 types of turns. Note that on either type of turn, agent or reveal, you may play one of your collected plot intrigue cards. It will say plot on the bottom of the card. If there's a cost, it will be noted by an arrow. Pay what's before the arrow to gain the benefit it points to. So let's look at the agent turn. When doing an agent turn, play one of your cards in your hand face up in front of you in order to send an available agent to an unoccupied board space. The locations available to go will depend on the card played. Each card has 0 or more location icons found in the lower left corner. There are 7 possible areas the agent could go, so 7 icons possible to find on a card. The agent can only go to a location shown on the played card. Only 1 agent goes to the board per card, and agents can't be placed on a space already occupied by an agent. 4 locations correspond to the 4 factions. You've got the Emperor, Spacing Guild, Bene Gesserit, and Fremen. The green area at the top is Landsrod. The blue circle icons are for the cities found on the planet. The triangle locations are spice trade areas. Each board action space shows the icon next to it. Some board action spaces have a cost to them in order to place an agent. If you can't pay the cost, you can't place your agent there. For example, placing an agent at this Emperor space costs 4 spice paid to the supply. The Sage Tabor space has a unique requirement. You must have 2 or more influence with the Fremen to go there. The card used may also give an extra effect when played like this in an agent turn. Look for the effect in the gray bar at the bottom. Ignore the blue area at the bottom. So when placing an agent, you gain the effect of the board space and the effect in the agent box of the card. Note that some agent box effects on the card show an arrow with items on the left and right. This means that when played, you must pay the thing on the left to get the reward on the right. You never have to take the effect and be forced to pay the cost. Whenever you send an agent to one of the 4 factions, you always get to move your influence cube marker upwards 1 space. I'll cover each action space in the next section. You can choose to take a reveal turn while you still have agents, but then you'll forfeit being able to use them. The reveal turn is the last turn you get in a round. Usually players play out all their agents on the board first. The reveal turn must be taken if you have no more agents available to use. Note, this is not done immediately after an agent turn. You must wait until your turn comes again to do the reveal turn on its own. The reveal turn consists of these steps in this order: reveal cards, resolve reveal effects, set strength, and clean up. First, you'll reveal all the cards still remaining in your hand that haven't previously been used to send an agent out. Put them face up in front of you, making sure to keep them separate from the other played cards. Then gain the effects shown in the reveal boxes of all the cards just revealed. You'll gain everything in the bottom blue area of each card. You can choose to resolve each card in whatever order you wish. The numbers in the blue diamonds for gained rewards are called Persuasion and are used to gain new cards to your deck. The Persuasion can be used before, between, or after your reveal effects are all resolved. Next, you'll total the strength you have for the current conflict. Each troop in the battlefield center area counts as 2 strength. The troops in your garrison don't count towards anything. Any swords revealed during your reveal turn bump your strength up 1 point each. You must at least have 1 troop in the conflict to have any strength in the conflict. Move your combat marker along the strength track for your adjusted total. If you gain more than 20 strength, flip the token over and start again from the beginning of the track. The last step of the reveal turn is to clean up. Remove all the cards from in front of you and put them in your discard pile. Pretty simple. As you spend the persuasion points to gain new cards, you can choose any card from the Imperial row and reserve cards. The cost for a card is shown at the top right of the card. You can buy as many cards as you can afford. Any leftover persuasion is lost after the reveal turn. Of course, you can pool all the persuasion points from each card together and buy a single card. You don't have to use 1 card to buy 1 card. New cards bought are placed in your discard pile. It'll eventually get shuffled into your deck and drawn later. The Imperium row consists of 5 cards from the Imperium deck. Whenever a card is bought, immediately replace it with a new card off the top. So you can purchase a card, see a new one, and purchase that one too if you can afford it. I'll first talk about the action spaces found within the 4 factions. Each faction will have 2 action spaces possible, having various effects. They have their own symbol and color associated with them, which will help you know which card to play to let you move an agent there. And whenever you place an agent at one of them, you should move up your influence cube upwards once. When moving up to a victory point image, gain the point on the score track. Let's look at the effects of taking the various actions found on the game board. In the Fremen section, place an agent worker at the first space called Still Suits and gain 1 water token from the supply. Since the cross swords icon is also shown on the space, it means it's also one of the combat board spaces. Anytime you see this with a board action, you may deploy troops to the conflict area. You may always deploy any newly recruited troops, if any, this turn, directly into conflict. Plus, you can move up to 2 more troops from your garrison to the conflict. So, just having the icon doesn't give you more troops. It only allows you to move them to conflict, up to 2 from cubes already in your garrison, plus new ones gained this turn. As an example of this, the other Fremen board action called Hardy Warriors lets you put 2 more troops into your garrison after paying the 1 water cost to go there. Since the combat icon is also found on the space, you may deploy these 2 new troops directly to the conflict, plus 2 more from your garrison. You're not required to put any into conflict. You could just recruit them to your garrison and move nothing in. In the purple Bene Gesserit area above, you've got 2 board action spaces. The first is called Secrets and lets you gain 1 new intrigue card off the top of the deck. Then, any opponent who has 4 or more intrigue cards in their hand must give you 1 at random. Intrigue cards are kept secret until played face up in front of you. The second board action here is called Selective Breeding and costs 2 spice to go here. Then trash 1 card to draw 2 cards from your deck. Trashed cards never come back to your deck. You can choose to trash a card from your hand, played cards area on the table, or discard pile. Trashed reserve cards can go back to their reserve stacks. The Spacing Guild has 2 board actions. The first is Fold Space and lets you gain the Fold Space card from the reserves. Place it face up in your discard pile. The second board action here is called Highliner and costs 6 spice to go there. Then gain 2 water tokens from the supply and recruit 5 troops into your garrison. Since it has a combat icon, you may deploy some or all of those 5 to the conflict area and move up to 2 more from your garrison into conflict. The last faction is the Emperor faction in black. The first board action here is Wealth and gains you 2 Solari. The second action space is Conspire and costs 4 spice to go there. It gives you 5 Solari, 1 Intrigue card, and lets you recruit 2 troops to your garrison. Note that since there's not a combat icon on this space, you may not move any troops to the conflict here. That's all for the faction spaces. The next area is the Green Landsrod Council, sporting a green pentagon icon. At the High Council space, pay 5 Solari to place your disc from your supply to one of the 4 spots next to it. Each player may do this action once per game. By having your token in a council seat, you always have 2 extra persuasion points for the rest of the game during your reveal turns. The Hall of Oratory space lets you recruit a troop to your garrison, and during your reveal turn, you'll have 1 extra persuasion while your agent is here. At the Rally the Troops space, pay 4 Solari and recruit 4 troops. The Swordmaster space next to it lets you gain your last agent worker. Pay 8 Solari when going here and collect your 3rd agent set aside during setup. Place it on your leader. For the rest of the game, including this round, you will have 3 agents to be able to send to do actions. The last board space in this area is the Mentat space. Pay 2 Solari to place your agent here. Then draw 1 card from your deck and gain the Mentat worker if it's still there. If you're able to gain it, place it on your leader and use it this round as one of your agents. During the recall phase, return the Mentat here. Let's now look at the board spaces with the orange triangle icon found in the desert. 2 of them are found at Chome. You can send an agent to sell melange, which lets you sell 2, 3, 4, or 5 spice melange to the supply to gain Solari. Gain the number of Solari as shown here for how much spice you're selling. The second spot is to secure a contract. Going here simply gives you 3 Solari. The other 3 triangle board actions are found on the Dune planet and are known as the Makers. The Great Flat space costs 2 water to go there and gives you 3 spice tokens from the supply. Also, gain any spice tokens that may have accumulated here. Since it shows a combat icon, you may deploy up to 2 troops into the conflict from your garrison. The Haga Basin space costs 1 water token to place your agent. Then gain 2 spice from the supply plus any spice accumulated there. You may deploy up to 2 troops from your garrison to the conflict. The last of the Maker's spots is the Imperial Basin. It's free to place here and gives you 1 spice plus any accumulated spice tokens. You may deploy up to 2 troops from your garrison. This is a board space that can be controlled as shown by the flag outline below it. If there's any player's flag here, they gain 1 spice from the supply. The final 4 board spaces are the populated areas of Dune, shown by a blue circle icon. The first is Siege Tabor. To go here, you must have at least 2 influence with the Fremen, so your cube must be at the 2nd level or higher on the Fremen track. By going here, recruit 1 troop to your garrison and gain 1 water token. Then you can deploy the new recruit plus up to 2 more from your garrison since it shows the combat icon. The next space is the Research Station. Pay 2 water to send your agent here and draw 3 cards off the top of your deck. Then you may deploy up to 2 troops into the conflict. The Carthage space lets you recruit 1 troop and draw an intrigue card. You may deploy the new troop to the conflict and deploy up to 2 more from your garrison. This is another space that can be controlled as shown by the flag. If any player's flag is here, they'll gain 1 Solari. The last populated area is Arakeen and lets you gain 1 recruit and draw 1 card from your deck. Since it's a combat space, you may immediately deploy the one just added, plus up to 2 more troops from your garrison. Whoever controls this space will gain 1 Solari. That covers all the board action spaces. but I'll also point you to the icon guide and board action reference pages in the rulebook for more clarifications. For example, an alliance with a faction requires you to have the alliance token, and your influence level in a faction has to do with how high your cube is on their track. The game will end in one of two ways, either after 10 rounds tracked by the conflict cards, or once any player has moved up to 10 or more victory points on the VP track. It's possible for multiple people to gain 10 or more victory points in the same round, so play out the full round. Don't stop the game immediately. Remember that points can be earned primarily through combat and advancing up the faction's influence tracks. At the end of the recall phase of the final round, let players play their in-game intrigue cards they may have collected. Many of these are worth extra victory points. After all of them are resolved, whoever has the most victory points is declared the winner. If a tie, the tiebreakers in order are amount of spice, solari, water, and then garrison troops. Dune Imperium can be played solo or two-player by adding in the House Hagal cards. The cards are used to control automated opponents known as rivals, who also compete against you. The rivals will be sent to the board to occupy board spaces and contest in conflicts by recruiting and deploying troops. Rivals can be affected by cards and board spaces that affect players or opponents. Set up the game for each rival as a player with a leaderboard, 2 agents, and cubes on the influence tracks. It won't be on the VP track. In a 2-player game, you'll play against one rival. It won't start with any troops in its garrison. During the player turns phase, the rival will take agent turns but never reveal turns. On their turn, flip the top card of the House Hagal deck. Place an unused colors agent to the revealed board space on the card, as long as it's unoccupied. If it is, ignore the card and keep revealing cards until you get to an empty space to send the agent to. Whenever the rival deck is empty or the reshuffle card is flipped, shuffle all their deck and discards together to make a new deck. The agent will never have to spend resources to move to a board space, nor will it gain the shown benefits. Instead, follow the card's direction. If you see any of the 4 factions icons with a gold arrow over it, the rival advances up that track. The rival gains no bonuses on the influence tracks, but does take the alliance token if able. In solo games, when you see the signet ring, the rival will use their leader's ability. When you see the gray cube icon, the rival recruits troops to its own garrison like a player would. If the revealed card sends its agents to a space with the combat icon, deploy them to the conflict. They'll also deploy up to 2 troops from their garrison if able. When you reveal the Harvest Spice card, follow the instructions on the card. When sending the agent to harvest spice on Dune, remove the bonus spice from the space. In the combat phase, each rival with at least 1 troop in conflict gets a combat bonus. In turn order for the rivals, reveal the top card of the House Hagal deck. Ignore everything on the card except the swords on the bottom. Advance their combat marker on the combat track by the shown swords revealed, plus the normal amount for each troop in the conflict. The players may play combat intrigue cards before resolving the combat. You'll only have 1 rival when playing a 2-player game. Remove from the House Hagal deck the 3 Arakeen cards marked 1P in the upper right corner. Shuffle the rest of the cards to make their deck and put all 3 of their agents near its supply. The rival competes against you and the second player, operating by its own set of rules. It won't collect resources, build a deck, earn rewards, or score victory points. The rival otherwise operates as I just explained. After each of the first player's agent turns, House Hagal gets a turn as long as it has agents remaining. Should the first player gain their 3rd agent or the Mentat, the rival will end up having 3 turns in some rounds. House Hagal can't collect rewards from a conflict, so it can never take control of a board space with a flag. But by winning a conflict for a board space currently controlled by a player, their control marker is removed. While playing Dune Imperium solo, you'll compete against 2 rivals. Add their VP tokens to the victory point track. They could end the game when reaching 10 points and defeat you. In the solo game, you must choose a difficulty level for the rivals from the chart in the rulebook. There's 3 levels: Novice, Veteran, and Expert. Each comes with varying setup steps. Plus, there's an Expert Plus difficulty that restricts you from being able to gain your 3rd agent. Choose a leader for each rival, but do not give them Paul Atreides or Helena Riches. For your first solo game, it's recommended that you give them Earl Memnon Thorvald and Glossu the Beast Raban. The rivals will never use the leader's ability on the left, only the signet abilities. Give each rival their own color of game pieces with cubes at the bottom of each influence track. Place a number of their troops into their garrisons at the start of the game as shown by the difficulty level you've chosen. Place their third agents or sword masters into the conflict deck with a number of cards above them. Put 5 cards above them for novice, 4 cards for veteran, and 3 cards for expert. From the House Hagal deck, remove all the cards marked with a 2P in the upper right corner. Shuffle the rest into a deck. Some of the difficulty levels tell you to place 5 Solari token on the Mentat space. That means the cost for the Mentat is now 5 Solari instead of 2. You and each rival starts with 1 water token plus any extra resources shown for your difficulty level. The rival setup on your left takes the first player marker. The rivals will take agent turns as described like normal using their House Hagal cards. They'll go until they run out of agents to send. When they harvest spice, they'll collect the spice to their own supply instead of sending it back to the general supply. The rivals in solo mode will be able to gain first and second place rewards during conflicts. They'll be able to gain victory points and influence with the factions. They can gain Solari, Spice, Water, and Intrigue cards like a normal player would during the game. Rivals may now gain control of the 3 board spaces, placing a control marker on the flags. They'll be able to gain the rewards whenever you or a rival sends an agent there. They will also gain the defensive bonus of 1 troop to the conflict when a card with that space is later revealed. The rivals can gain the Mentat and use it as an agent. Whenever a rival has gained a certain number of resources, they'll immediately turn them in to gain victory points. 3 Intrigue cards to gain a point, 3 water tokens for a point, 7 Solari for a point, and 7 Spice for a point. When revealing the conflict card above their sword masters, the rivals gain it and can use them in the current round and for the rest of the game. Whenever a rival has a choice of gaining influence in a faction, they'll choose the one where they have the least. If a tie, you decide for them. At the end of the game, if you play the Corner the Market Intrigue card, treat each rival as having 2 of the Spice Must Flow cards. When playing at expert difficulty, the rivals change their deployment of troops decisions. When fighting for a level 1 or 2 conflict card, the rival won't deploy troops if it is already leading by 2 or more troops. For conflict level 3 cards, the rivals will deploy as many troops as possible at every opportunity. Keep the rulebook handy and check BoardGameGeek.com for FAQs and extra content. Check the video description for links to Top Shelf Gamer for token upgrades, Cloud Puncher Games for board game shelving, and Mr. Meeple t-shirts for cool board gaming shirts. The Meeple Mentor channel is now part of the board game community, the Gateway Network, made up of great upcoming board game content creators. The network includes Instagrammers, podcasters, YouTubers, artists, and more. Click the link in the video's description or head over to the Gateway Network's Instagram to find great new content. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Like and subscribe if you found this teaching helpful. Stick around to watch another Learn to Play video. And remember, teach when you can, but always be learning. See you next time.